All right, so are you ready to like totally bust some stereotypes about Russia?
Yeah.
We're diving into Russian coffee culture
Oh.
today. And, I always thought the Russians were all about their tea
Mm-hmm.
and vodka,
Of course.
obviously. But it turns out there's a whole lot more to the story.
Yes.
So our source today is this really interesting article
Okay.
called "Do They Drink Coffee in Russian?"
All right.
from Coffee at Corner.
Yeah.
And it's got some pretty surprising stuff in it.
I bet. It's amazing how much we can learn from simply looking at what people drink.
Right.
You'd think coffee's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But the way Russians approach it tells you a lot about their history, their values, even their daily life.
Yeah, and the article actually points out that we often make assumptions about entire cultures,
Yes.
like the whole Russians and their tea thing.
Right.
But this deep dive is all about going beyond
Yeah.
those surface level perceptions.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that the Russian word for coffee, cafe,
Okay.
is actually used as a verb too.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Isn't it?
I've never thought of coffee as a verb before.
Right. Think about it. When something becomes a verb,
Okay.
it usually means it's deeply ingrained in the culture.
Yeah.
It becomes an action, a ritual, almost a way of life.
So it's more than just a drink. It's like a
It's a cultural experience.
Precisely. And this article actually breaks down all the different ways
Okay.
Russians actually cafe.
All right.
And let me tell you, some of these are pretty unique.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear about this Russian coffee action.
Okay. Well, first up, we have iced coffee.
Iced coffee.
Now I know what you're thinking.
What am I thinking?
Iced coffee? What's so special about that?
Okay, yeah, that's probably what I would think.
But the Russian method is totally different.
Okay.
Imagine this. You take a glass, you fill it with ice cubes, and then you pour hot water over them.
Hot water over ice.
I'm...
That's not how I make iced coffee, right? It's like a slow melting, layered experience.
Interesting.
The article doesn't go into detail about why they do it this way.
Okay.
But it really makes you wonder, does it affect the flavor?
Yeah.
Is it all about a specific temperature?
Mm.
It's fascinating to think about.
It definitely challenges my iced coffee assumptions.
Yeah.
Okay, what else is there?
All right, next up is espresso, or as they call it, café civet café.
Café civet coffee.
This one's got a whole story behind it.
Ooh, I love a good backstory. Lay it on me.
So café civet café originated in India.
Yeah.
It's made using a special cotton filter.
Okay.
And get this, the article hints that it might have made its way to Russia because of Napoleon.
What does Napoleon have to do with Russian coffee?
Well, Napoleon actually invaded India in the late 18th century.
Okay.
And during that time, there was a lot of cultural exchange happening.
Yeah.
So it's possible that this particular coffee brewing method traveled from India to Russia during that period. It's a little bit of a historical mystery, but it's definitely a cool connection.
History coffee, Napoleon. I'm hooked. Okay, tell me more about this Russian coffee menu.
All right, next up we have Good Cafe. Now, this isn't just any old cup of joe.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about quality.
Got it.
We're talking expertly made, espresso top-notch beans, even oxygenated water. It's like the gold standard of Russian coffee.
Oxygenated water.
Yeah.
Wow, they take their coffee seriously.
No.
I wonder if I were in Russia, would I even know how to order a good cafe?
Right.
It sounds like there's a whole secret language to learn.
Right, and that's what's so intriguing about this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting your caffeine fix, it's about appreciating the nuances of a well-crafted beverage.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real emphasis on specificity and discernment.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's like every aspect of Russian coffee has a deeper meaning,
Yeah.
a cultural significance.
Exactly, and that brings us to sweet cafe. Think of it as espresso, but instead of coffee grounds, they use sugar.
Wait, what? Sugar instead of coffee? That doesn't even sound like coffee anymore.
I know, it's wild, right?
Wow.
And it's often served cold. Okay. It really makes you wonder about the historical context. Was sugar a luxury at some point?
Yeah.
Making sweet cafe a special treat? Or is there something else at play here?
Right.
It's like a little cultural puzzle waiting to be solved.
You're right. There's definitely more to unpack here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got iced coffee, café civet cafe, good cafe, and sweet cafe.
Right.
That's quite the coffee lineup.
It is.
But what about the elephant in the room? Or should I say the samovar on the table?
Mm-hmm.
What about tea?
Ah, yes, tea. Well, despite this whole diverse coffee culture, black tea is still the most popular drink in Russia.
So even with all these fancy coffee options, tea still reigns supreme.
It seems so. It goes to show that cultural preferences are complex. Even though coffee has clearly found its place, tea is deeply rooted in their traditions passed down through generations.
That's like a comforting constant amidst all the change. Okay,
Yes.
before we move on to tea, tell me more about how they actually drink it. The article mentions something about sugar cubes and napkins.
Yes, they have this specific way of preparing black tea. It involves a napkin draped over the cup and sugar cubes held between the teeth while sipping. It almost sounds ceremonial, doesn't it?
It does. Okay, I'm ready for the next curveball. What else did you find in this article?
All right, get ready for this one. It's called the vodka and coffee cocktail.
Vodka and coffee
Yeah.
together. That's a
Yes.
combination I never would have thought of.
I know.
What's the story behind this one?
Well, it actually dates back to a time when alcohol was restricted in Russia.
Okay.
They would mix vodka with coffee and sweetened condensed milk to dilute the alcohol content.
Interesting.
It's a testament to their ingenuity, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So even with this whole coffee culture, they still find a way to work in the vodka.
Right.
I love how these different beverages coexist and
Yeah.
even blend together in Russian culture.
It's a great example of how cultures are constantly evolving and adapting.
Yeah.
They hold on to their traditions while incorporating new influences. It makes for a really fascinating mix.
And speaking of new influences, the article mentions that modern-day Russia has embraced global coffee brands like Tassimo Illy Lavazza and Espresso.
Yes.
It's like they're blending the old with the new.
It's a global exchange that's happening everywhere, and it's fascinating to see how Russia is navigating it.
Mm-hmm.
They're maintaining their unique coffee heritage while also being open to these international trends.
Right.
It's a balance a lot of cultures are trying to find, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. So we've gone from iced coffee with a twist to Coffee Civic Cafe with a Napoleonic backstory from the pursuit of good cafe to the sweetness of sweet cafe.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't forget the enduring reign of tea and the surprising emergence of the vodka and coffee cocktail.
It's amazing how much we can learn about a culture just by looking at their coffee habits. It's
Yeah.
a window into their history, their values, their everyday life.
And it definitely makes me want to experience Russian coffee culture firsthand.
Me too. There's
Yeah.
so much to discover, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This has been an incredible deep dive so far. But what does all this mean for our listener? Why should they care about Russian coffee culture?
Well, I think it challenges our assumptions about the world. It
Mhm.
reminds us that there's always more to learn, more to explore, more to appreciate about different cultures. And who knows, maybe it'll inspire someone to try a new coffee brewing method or even invent their own vodka and coffee cocktail. The possibilities are endless.
You're absolutely right. But there's one more thing I want to touch on before we wrap up this part of the deep dive. The article mentions something called diet vodka. You ever heard of that?
Diet vodka, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, it's apparently made without sugar or extra ingredients, so it's popular with people watching their calorie intake. It even claims to have some health benefits like aiding digestion and being easier on the liver.
Interesting. I wonder how the cultural perception of alcohol, particularly vodka in Russia, compares to other parts of the world.
Right.
Is there a greater emphasis on moderation, or is vodka seen as a purely social beverage?
That's a great question. It would be fascinating to explore that further.
Definitely. It goes to show that there is always more to uncover, even in a deep dive about coffee.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into Russian coffee culture. We've explored their unique coffee vocabulary, uncovered some fascinating historical connections, and even touched on the intriguing concept of diet vodka. But there's still so much more to discover.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into the cultural significance of these coffee traditions and explore how they fit into the broader context of Russian society.
So you are there.
You know, it's fascinating how a simple cup of coffee
Yeah.
can reveal so much about a culture. We've been talking about all these different types of coffee in Russia,
Right.
but I think it's important to kind of like look at the bigger picture here.
I agree. What does all this say about Russian culture as a whole?
Well, for one, it suggests a certain appreciation
Okay.
for ritual and tradition.
Hmm.
Think about the way they prepare their black tea with the napkin and the sugar cube. It's almost like a mini ceremony, right?
Yeah, and it's not just the tea.
Right.
Even their iced coffee
Yeah.
has this very specific method with the hot water poured over the ice.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they really savor the process, the experience
Yes.
of the drink as much as the drink itself.
Exactly. And when you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. Russia has a long and rich history.
Right.
And many of their traditions have been passed down through generations. So it's no surprise that this reverence for ritual extends to their coffee culture as well.
It's interesting because it kind of contrasts with the grab-and-go coffee culture
Yeah.
we often see in other parts of the world, especially in places like the US, where everything is so fast-paced.
That's a great point. It highlights how different cultures prioritize different things.
Yeah.
In Russia, there seems to be a greater emphasis on slowing down, savoring the moment, and connecting with others
Yeah.
over a shared beverage.
Right.
And this brings us back to that idea we touched on earlier, café as a verb.
Right. So it's not just about drinking coffee. It's about engaging in this ritualistic activity,
Totally.
this cultural experience.
Precisely. And I think this emphasis on ritual also ties into the importance of hospitality in Russian culture.
Okay.
Sharing a pot of tea or a cup of coffee is often seen as a way to welcome guests and show them respect.
Right.
It's about creating a sense of warmth and connection.
That's a beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's like the beverage becomes a symbol of their hospitality and their desire to connect with others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, another aspect of Russian coffee culture that I find particularly interesting is
Okay.
their embrace of strong flavors.
Oh, yeah, like the sweet cafe we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Using sugar instead of coffee grounds.
Uh-huh.
That's definitely a bold choice.
It is. And it makes you wonder about the evolution of taste preferences over time.
Right.
Was this born out of necessity, maybe during times when coffee was scarce or expensive?
Yeah.
Or is it simply a reflection of their palate? It's fascinating to think about.
And let's not forget about the vodka and coffee cocktail.
Oh, right.
Combining those two strong flavors plus sweetened condensed milk
Yeah.
definitely speaks to a certain fearlessness
Yes.
when it comes to taste.
You're absolutely right. And that drink is a perfect example of how Russians are able to adapt and innovate
Right.
even when faced with limitations. Remember, it was created during a time when alcohol was restricted.
Oh, yeah.
They found a way to enjoy their vodka
Yeah.
while also incorporating coffee,
Right.
resulting in this unique and surprisingly delicious concoction.
It's like a testament to their resourcefulness and their ability to find joy even in challenging times.
Exactly. And I think this adaptability is also reflected in the way modern-day Russia is embracing global coffee brands.
Right.
They're holding on to their traditions while also being open to new influences and experiences.
It's that balance we were talking about earlier. They're not afraid to try new things,
Yeah.
but they're also proud of their heritage and their unique way of doing things.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this brings us back to that intriguing concept of diet vodka that you mentioned earlier.
Right.
It's a modern twist on a traditional beverage catering to a more health-conscious consumer,
Yeah.
but it also raises some interesting questions.
Like, how does this fit into the overall cultural perception of
Yeah.
vodka in Russia?
Exactly. Is it seen as a contradiction, a departure from tradition?
Yeah.
Or is it simply another example of their ability to adapt and evolve while still staying true to their roots?
It's definitely something to ponder.
It is.
I think it's safe to say that Russian coffee culture is full of surprises and contradictions.
Yes.
It's traditional yet innovative, ritualistic yet adaptable, strong yet nuanced.
You've summed it up perfectly. And I think that's what makes it so captivating.
Yeah.
There's always something new to discover.
Right.
Something that challenges our assumptions and expands our understanding of the world.
I completely agree. And that's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it? They take us beyond the surface and allow us to really explore the depths of a topic, uncovering those hidden gems of knowledge that you might otherwise miss.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive into Russian coffee culture, I'm struck by how much there is to discover in something as seemingly simple as a cup of coffee.
It's true. We often take these everyday rituals for granted.
Yeah.
But when we take the time to really examine them, they can reveal so much about a culture, its history, its values.
And in this case, it's challenged a lot of my assumptions about Russia.
Uh-huh.
I went in thinking it was all about tea and vodka,
Right.
but I've come out with a whole new appreciation for their diverse and fascinating coffee culture.
It's a reminder that there's always more to learn, more layers to uncover, more perspectives to consider. And that's what makes these deep dives so rewarding, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's like we've only scratched the surface here. I'm already thinking about all the questions I still have,
Right.
the things I want to explore further. That's the beauty of it. It sparks our curiosity and inspires us to keep learning. And who knows? Maybe this deep dive will inspire someone to seek out a Russian cafe, try a traditional iced coffee, or even experiment with making their own vodka and coffee cocktail.
I know, I'm definitely adding try Russian iced coffee to my to-do list.
Yes.
But even beyond the specific drinks, I think the biggest takeaway for me is the importance of approaching things with an open mind
Oh, absolutely.
and a willingness to challenge our preconceived notions.
I couldn't agree more. The world is full of surprises, and sometimes the most unexpected discoveries are found in the places we least expect them. So, to our listener, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking out those hidden gems of knowledge that make life so incredibly fascinating. And who knows, maybe your next deep dive will be inspired by something as simple as a cup of coffee.
Until next time, happy sipping.
And may your coffee always be good, even if it's not good cafe.